Welcome to the American Academy of Grief Counseling's Videogram on avoidance behavior in grief. And as grief counselors, this is a common symptom that we might see with individuals regarding their grief itself. It can occur early in the phases of the grieving process, which might not be as pathological or as dangerous. It might, in fact, be kind of natural to avoid certain things because part of grieving is very painful, and sometimes the body needs to avoid what is causing the immense grief. So sometimes maybe initially if someone is doing avoidance behavior in grief, it's not that bad. What we're referring more to in this video is avoidance behavior in grief well beyond the norms of the grieving period, where it becomes more pathological. It's not avoiding the situation, the grieving process itself, to allow the body to heal, to allow it to recover, but it is actually avoiding it because it no longer wants to face it. It doesn't want to proceed through the process of grief. It doesn't want to proceed beyond denial. It doesn't want to go to acceptance. And I think that's very important to point out as we begin this video on avoidance behavior in grief. Now, avoidance behavior is something that is very natural. It's natural in life to avoid something. It's very natural in life to avoid something that is unpleasant. We don't want to deal with things that we do not like, things that hurt us, things that remind us of bad things. External stimuli and eternal emotions, it looks to reward and also give us reasons to want to be around something. And it also looks at the risk of wanting to be around something. So if something is unpleasant and there's risk with it, then we're not going to want to endeavor into it, as opposed to if the stimuli is pleasant and there's a reward with it. And that's basic human nature. That's instinctive, to avoid the unpleasant. So avoidance while grieving can take upon, like I said in the beginning, an important part in helping our bodies heal emotionally and physically, just to step away a little bit, but it can also become bad if it is preventing us from completing the grieving cycle itself. So places or things, scents, movies, music, all these things can remind us about the deceased, and in the beginning, quite naturally, push us away so that we don't have to focus on, so we don't have to think about it. And in pathological avoidance, it becomes even worse. Usually over time, though, what we see is when we hear the music or the song that reminds us of the deceased, or we drive by a spot that reminds us of the deceased, there's a little bit of negative, but there's also a little bit of positive. It's bittersweet, so to speak, and allowing us to understand that there once was something wonderful there. It's gone, but it was still wonderful. So looking at the picture of a loved one, watching an old home movie of the loved one, it's bittersweet. It's not just negative. It's not just a negative stimuli anymore. Avoidance behavior, of course, becomes pathological when over an extended period of time, it's no longer to heal by allowing the body not to think about it, but it becomes something that no one wants to do because you don't want to go through the grieving process. The individual no longer wishes to accept the fact that something horrible happened. They look to avoid it. They want to deny it, at least at the subconscious level. And in doing so, the isolation is purposeful and long-term. They isolate from a particular thing. They isolate from others as well, so that they don't have to deal with it. They're not doing their grief work, so to speak. So the isolation can be from persons, places, or things. It could be people themselves that were associated with the deceased as well. Maybe the individual doesn't want to be around the brother of a deceased person, or a sister, or a parent, because it reminds them too much of the deceased. Maybe they don't want to see the son of the person because he looks just like their father or their mother, and so forth. Others will dive into work to avoid feelings. They will immerse themselves in various things. So some individuals, when they grieve, they're not able to do things that they like or their hobbies. Others will immediately dive in. And it's a form of avoidance when one uses the cover of work and busyness to keep the mind so busy that it's not able to think about the loss itself. It also becomes pathological when individuals start to dismiss even the good memories. So as I said in the previous slide, bittersweet. You're able to watch maybe a home movie, look at a picture, and you have a tear, but also a smile. But pathological avoidance occurs when you only think of the sadness, of only what was bad. Another one is refusing to enter into the room of the deceased. You'll see some individuals not even touch the room. The room was left the way it was. It becomes a mausoleum. It becomes a museum to the deceased, and they're not able to go in. They're not able to go through things that should be given away or left alone. And this becomes a major issue. And it's sad when someone is so trapped in the past that they can't even go in through an individual's clothes and give them away. Instead, everything is left hanging and so forth. Also, individuals who want to avoid might turn to drugs. They might turn to alcohol. They might turn to other types of activities. Again, it's to the extreme level to escape the pain itself. I think it's important, as listed here, that it is important for one to heal, but one cannot let the loved one die by pretending that they never existed. So it's important to heal. It's important sometimes to try to not think about what just happened, but by pretending that by pretending that the loved one never existed does not allow one to come to the acceptance of the fact that they're gone. And it also does not allow the individual grieving to truly enjoy the gift of love that they had with this particular individual. So how to help undo bad avoidance as counselors? So when counseling, we can help the person realize that support systems are critical. When individuals start to go into this deep of avoidance, individuals, family, support groups, church, so forth. These are all important ways individuals can again begin to resurface, to re-emerge itself. It's also important to remind the individual that the person is still alive in spirit, and you need to remember, to recall, or you will lose this person. Those of faith, have the next world. Others of faith might not have that belief. So regardless, you can still keep the person alive through conversation, through looking through albums, photo albums, watching home movies and stuff. The other thing that's important if counseling someone who's showing signs of pathological avoidance is to teach them when to identify when these types of behaviors start to emerge themselves. It's important for them to know that right now I'm exhibiting a pathological behavior. This is something that I should not do. And we need to also let these individuals know that while sometimes past memories are painful, that doesn't mean they're bad or dangerous. A lot of people avoid things and they might think that it's a bad memory. It's a dangerous memory. I cannot do this. I cannot think about this. And that's something that we want to tell individuals who are grieving, that's a bad idea. Yes, it's painful, but painful doesn't always equate to bad. Sometimes we need to face pain. Sometimes we need to accept the pain so that we can overcome it itself. Now, individuals who haven't visited a graveside yet, who haven't maybe seeing a person that was related to the deceased and they're having a hard time going through, we want to respect them. But if it's at a pathological state, it might be time for them on their own to reemerge and set a planned time when is best for them, maybe to drive by a particular place that was special or to visit a gravesite. It is important to finally reach that so that denial can be removed, acceptance can come in, and that the person can actually start to live again and to have that bittersweet and to know that pain isn't necessarily bad when it comes to overcoming this pathological type of avoidance. So I think these are all important things listed here, and you can find a lot of this also from the blog, What's Your Grief? They have What is Avoidance Behavior article listed there, and you can learn a lot about avoidance and why it's bad at the pathological state, at least. Of course, initially, avoidance might be not a bad thing, but we're dealing more with individuals who are avoiding things well beyond the normal grieving period times. We are the American Academy of Grief Counseling. Our email is info@aihcp.org, and our number is 330-652-7776. And behind me here is our link to our program. Our program has 4 core courses that lead to certification. So if you're qualified, please look into this program and see if it matches your academic and professional goals themselves. If you know of someone who is exhibiting pathological avoidance, then utilize some of these ideas that were presented in this video and try to help them pass denial and come to some type of acceptance so that, again, they just don't have pain, but they also have a little bit of joy, a little bit of the bittersweet of an individual who passed away. I'd like to thank you for listening today and have a good day. Thank you.